South Africa is hosting the first ever Global Aviation Gender Summit, and it starts today. Now, the summit takes place over 3 days and will see nearly 500 top-ranking representatives of governments and the aviation industry from across the world to jointly bring about meaningful gender transformation and equality in the aviation sector. Our reporter Vanessa Puna is at that summit, and it's being held at the Cape Town International Convention Centre in Cape Town this morning. So let's cross over to Vanessa to find out more about this. Vanessa, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you, Sakina. I am here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre, where this 3-day summit will start shortly, of course, coinciding with a very special time for South Africans, this being Women's Month, and of course on the eve of Women's Day, as we'll celebrate here in South Africa tomorrow. Now, Sakina, I can tell you that aviation, the aerospace industry, as we've been speaking to some people in the industry, yesterday I spoke to a first officer for SAA, Fatima Jakut. I also spoke to a manager of air traffic, an air traffic controller by trade, by training, saying that this industry is still highly dominated by men, despite the strides made by various government intervention, as well as various programs and training happening, still sadly male-dominated. If I can just tell you that the conference facility at this point in time, just a smattering of guests. We do know that various role players from governments, from the aerospace industry, are expected to attend this 3-day event. And of course, just some statistics coming through from the Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa, who is co-hosting this event with their international counterparts, saying that the one sector in aviation where transformation is not a problem happens to be the cabin crew sector. That, of course, is where you see quite a number of black females having come through the ranks over the past couple of years. But various sectors such as, for example, air traffic control, engineering within the aerospace industry, and various other opportunities, still at this point in time, women lacking in terms of accessing those industries. Now, if I can just tell you, having spoken to some women that have been in this industry for the past 20 years or so, saying that one of the biggest problems and challenges facing women entering this space is first, exposure. Quite a number of young South Africans, for example, would not have had the exposure of even walking into an airport, just starting there as young children. And then also finance being another big challenge in terms of having more women enter this space. And we've heard that, for example, yesterday we've heard that it could cost up to 800 Rand an hour for pilots in order to achieve or attain their pilot's license. I've read in an article that even the attaining pilot's licenses in South Africa, a very small percentage of black women make up the total of pilots in South Africa. And of course, pilots not being the only space or the only sector in aviation, but of course those being the most popular. So yes, we do look forward to 3 days of various role players coming and presenting their views. And of course we do know that air traffic, or if one can call it the air transport industry, is a multi-trillion dollar industry, creating a number of jobs in across the world. And of course we do expect that all the various role players will be thrashing out ways and means of being able to assist in terms of getting more women up to par and up to scratch. But I'm joined now by my guest, who is the Director of Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa, Ms. Poppy Cause. A very warm good morning to you. I've just been telling the Morning Live team, and of course of Africa, that this is the first conference of its kind. You are on record saying that transformation is painstakingly slow in this industry. Not enough women, not enough black women coming on board. As the Civil Aviation Authority, what are the reasons for the slow pace of transformation in this industry?
So it is true, this is the first ever Global Aviation Summit that is taking place in South Africa, and we're quite delighted to be hosting it, as supported by the Department of Transport. The issues of women empowerment and gender equity in the aviation sector is a worrying one. And it is not only a South African phenomenon, but it's a global one. That is why we said we need to come as states in a collective voice to raise these issues sharply, but not only just talk about them and craft an action plan in terms of how do we deal with this imbalance in our sector. And we are going to be unpacking the barriers. So pretty much what you were saying, what are the reasons for the slow pace of women taking up technical careers or rather getting into technical fields of the aviation sector. We are going to be looking at what are the barriers, what is it that makes it so difficult for young girls to aspire to take a career in aviation. And we believe that having these conversations, not in isolation as South Africa, but having a coordination with the UN agencies, with member states, with the entire industry, to say how do we break these barriers, because clearly the playing field is not leveled, which is why we are saying today time to act is now, and we've got to raise these issues sharply. And I am excited that we are raising these issues when we are celebrating the August month in South Africa. And we believe that whatever the outcome from the conversations that we are going to be having will find expression in the General Assembly in Montreal next year, where we'll be presenting a paper and say, as South Africa, together with many member states, we met, and this is the roadmap in terms of how best do we change the picture where we see a lot of imbalance in terms of gender representation.
If I can ask you, let's bring it back to a South African context. We know that the first black South African pilot, we had the first black South African pilot way back in 1998. Mm-hmm. 20 years on, if you were just top of mind, we know that it's an expensive industry to enter. What are the other challenges facing specifically South Africans?
So over and above access, which also talks to financial affordability, because to train as a pilot, the truth of the matter, it is extremely expensive. To train as an aeronautical engineer, it is extremely expensive. And therefore we believe that one of the barriers to access is financial, but equally because of there is no greater awareness of aviation. If you talk about or if you talk to a girl from a rural area in Mutu or a rural girl from Limpopo, they will barely tell you what aviation is all about. They've never seen an aircraft, they've never seen an airport, and we are saying something is not going right. How do we first create an awareness, but equally how do we interrogate the issues of affordability such that being in aviation is like other traditional careers, whether you want to be a lawyer, access is not an issue. You just have to perform well in school, meet the entry requirements, but in aviation it is extremely difficult. So we are saying this conversation should in fact be tackling those issues, to say how do we deal with the issues of access, how do we deal with the issues of just creating awareness so that aviation is not only for a limited few, but it is a career that is understood and known, or rather a sector that is understood and known by the multitudes of South Africans.
So over the next 3 days, if I can just sort of wrap up our conversation, we're going to hear presentations by a number of role players in this industry, globally, from governments, from people in the aviation space, in the aero space, because the sense out there is that the only career path that one could follow in aviation, you're either a pilot or you're a cabin crew assistant or a cabin crew member, and that is also one of the myths that you would like to change with a conference of this magnitude.
Absolutely. So we want to demystify a lot of myths and a lot of stereotypes. In aviation, you can be trained as a doctor and become an aviation medicine officer. We have aviation lawyers who specialize in aviation law. There are many other, careers over and up. Leadership, for instance. And we are saying we need to make aviation fashionable. Everybody must know about aviation. It does not only end by being a pilot and by being a cabin crew, but there are air traffic controllers, there are aeronautical engineers, there are people who do spray painting, So we've got a career guide which we call A to Z, and it lists all the aviation careers that we have, cartographers. So the list is endless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Poppy Khoza, speaking to us there, of course, the Director of South Africa's Civil Aviation Authority, ahead of this 3-day conference really aimed at promoting and advancing gender equality and women empowerment in aviation.